Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of Vertical Stars Podcast 4th season. How my loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. Enjoy this amazing interview because Kevin and Sean Kiner board the mothership to discuss Dark Winds on AMC Plus. Now come on board as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Kiners. Thank you so much for coming to the Vertical Stars Podcast.
Hey, it's our pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Totally my pleasure. So I always start off with a question of inspiration. So inspired your love for music, or both of your loves for music, and who your earliest influences.
Um, wow. I mean, my earliest influences were Led Zeppelin, um, yes, Black Sabbath, the
Mm.
Eagles, and then even Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and the Allman Brothers. Um, yeah, I really didn't come to more classical music for a long time. Also, didn't really come to folk music until I started working with Gustavo Santaolalla, maybe 15 years ago or something like that.
And for me, we didn't really listen to a ton of music just because Kevin, he didn't want to be listening to more music in his off time, and so we just didn't generally listen to much. So a lot of like the soundtrack of my childhood tended to be movie scores, and so John Williams and the like were big influences early on for me.
So combining you two, so we have Led Zeppelin on one side, Black Sabbath. On the other hand, we got John Horner, John Williams. I'm sure there's a few others. I don't know if later on Hans Zimmer, but basically the classic movie ones. How does your music, when you think about how you have a sound to you guys or a voice, combine these two very, very different type of influences?
Well, I mean, I came to classical music once Superman and Star Wars came out.
Mm.
So I mean, I guess I approach the orchestra different than John Williams does, although sometimes I approach it very similarly because I'm writing in that genre. But just I mean, we were talking about like Dark Winds, the kind of music which is vastly different from our Star Wars music. I'm a guitarist, and I I play a lot of different acoustical fretted and non-fretted instruments. Um, and like I said, when I started working with Gustavo Santaolalla, it really influenced a lot of the finger picking and kind of the use of space, the extreme exposure to soloistic instruments, that kind of philosophy. And so I mean, and Sean and I working together. I mean, what would you say, Sean?
Um, I'm not really like, I feel like if I knew exactly how all the different influences, all the music that I love influences my voice, then I would have a lot more self-awareness. You know what I mean? I think that when it comes to the time to be in front of the blank page, you have those voices in your head that are influencing things, but we're trying to pick up like specific influences, like, okay, what genre are we in? What are the audience expectations for that genre? How do we subvert them? How do we support them? How do we do them in a new way that isn't boring? Um, that's kind of more what we're focused on in the moment.
And having been such a large part of the music and the sound of modern Star Wars, when you think about John Williams' score, it's very soaring. It's you notice it. I mean, when you have a movie, some like I said, some soundtracks like maybe Hans Zimmer kind of weaves it into like the movie, but Star Wars music is extremely noticeable with the Frank of the film. When you think about writing for Star Wars music versus writing for Dark Winds, do you approach how you want to handle how the music covers the the visual differently?
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about how to like properly express this. Um, So I was listening to, I think it was George Lucas himself who was talking about the music of Star Wars and how the music of Star Wars tells the story, right? We call it expository score, stuff that's telling you what's happening, that's supporting things. And so, like in like mainstream storytelling, they have three basic tools which they use. There's plot. It's the stuff that's happening. The characters who are the people that are moving through it, and the setting, which is kind of the backdrop, but also the world. You know, like in Dark Winds, it's not just the beautiful Navajo reservation that they're filming on. It's also the world with colonial forces, and like government forces taking away funding and influencing Native indigenous people's lives. And so that contextualizes it. The way that those three things kind of play off of each other is how you get subtext and theme also. And so with Star Wars music, it is extremely heavy on the plot end. That expository score comes from the music because the music is a way to frame and highlight any of those three things, often things simultaneously. Um, but Star Wars stuff tends to be extremely always have a heavy a foot in the plot camp. With Dark Winds, it's much more in the character and setting kind of thing. Well, we'll be playing like the plot when there's tension and things, when there's excitement and all that. But the wonderful like character work, it's very much over here. And so that's how you kind of shift your focus and how you start to change how you think and approach how to support story in very different genres.
Yeah, I I mean, when I interviewed with George Lucas in 2006, I mean, the things I said was that I've never been accused of being subtle. And I think that's what you're talking about with Star Wars, and that was um, I would modify that now, and because sometimes in Dark Winds, especially when as Sean spoke about the episode that we really gravitate towards in season three is episode six, where it goes into this kind of fever dream, and they created this world, and the music doesn't hit you over the head with a melody or anything like that. It just kind of helps the atmosphere of this
Mm.
fever dream world, and um, that is a subtle thing, and yet we gave it a lot of thought, and you know, as did the producers, and so part of the things was part of the thought we were giving it was how can we make this, because it's almost a horror movie, but not really. But how can we make it not the tropey kind of horror sound, or not even say tropey, because I don't consider like Hitchcock or Bernard Herrmann tropey. I consider it something that you recognize that kind of vibe, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to be still in our show, but this was very different from our show. It was a different part that our show had never shown before. Um, and we wanted to still have the earthiness and the soloistic instruments, and yet they had to be kind of psychedelic a little bit. And so that was quite a challenge for us, I think.
So, and forgive me if this question doesn't make sense, but when you're again writing the music for particular scenes, are you writing for the moment, or are you writing to kind of signal or manipulate the viewer into what's going to happen next, into the next moment of the scene that you're kind of like walking them into?
These are the right questions if you want to be a composer. It's
Yeah.
always case by case,
Yeah, this would
right?
be like, yeah, this would be film scoring 101, like what we would tell like a film scoring class what to do, or how we approach something at least. I mean, because there is no right answer.
Hmm.
Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, no, I mean, there's a lot of baggage with the word manipulate the audience,
Yeah.
although, there's often times when we're not manipulating so much as we're resonating with them, right? I'm like reaching out into this, like I know I want something sad here, right? So I'm gonna just like put out something that I feel is sad, and hopefully it will make the audience also feel that, and then that'll have the proper kind of effect supporting the story and the emotion of the moment. Um, So I
Now,
mean that's and it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before with those like three basics foundational aspects of storytelling, right? We have to be in going in linear time, right? But we are much more unmoored from reality as than the visuals. You know what I mean? So they can cut to a big wide of like a transition shot to a new character, but we can be playing what just happened still. You know what I
mm,
mean? And using that mood to kind of carry over. Help that the visuals from before the events of before contextualize the new scene in a strong way, or we might be introducing, setting up, emotionally setting up the audience for something that's about to happen.
Yeah, I would say also the way that you phrase that question is like if you're telling the audience what's about to happen, I don't think we do that. I think it's more a reaction to what is happening in the present, as things are going on. For instance, Lee Porn, one of my favorite scenes is finally comes to terms with this priest who is in his past, and he comes and he sees that he possibly murdered this priest because the priest was. I mean, it's implied that he was molesting children. Um, but this is a horrible thing, and yet there's a scene where he's actually in his dream he's talking to this priest, and the music is very much reacting, not in a Mickey Mousey or in a very flowing long form way to what's going on between the priest and Leaphorn, and it's kind of a vibe that plays through and gives you kind of supports the feelings of what's going through his head and his emotions and this revelation that is happening to him.
now another thing that I've always have wondered about, and I've asked a composer in the past, but I do curious your perspective. Um, when you're creating the sound, obviously your mind starts building the music to a track. You hear the sound in your mind, you start building and developing the sound, right? But a scene in a TV show or a movie doesn't necessarily follow logically the way in the same way that a music would have to build upon itself. Do you ever find that the building of the song does not match the building of the scene, and you have to like, and the music is the scene's not taking you where the music is telling you want to go with it?
For me, it's I write to picture, so it the music is always tailored to what I want it to say about the picture, and that's what motivates in my head. That's why I hear things is because of what I'm watching. So I don't usually have a problem with the music wanting to take off on its own. There may be times when the picture cuts a little too soon, and I wish I could have finished a phrase.
Mhm.
Um, so there are those odd, but those are more technical problems that you have to just deal with as a film composer. But mostly, I mean, I'm inspired by the picture, and I very seldom write music if I don't watch picture.
Um, I, on the other hand, feel like not constantly, but I do have to keep my eye out for, am I writing like music or am I writing score, right? And
Okay.
there's like sometimes where it's like, oh, I got distracted writing music when I was supposed to be doing score. Just got a little like carried away with it could go in this neat place. Then I watch, I'm like, that's not right because it's not telling the story.
Mm.
If that makes any sense. But you bring up an interesting point because the movie has to build on itself, whereas music doesn't. Music can, if you're writing strong leitmotif, like Howard Shore is a great example. Oh yeah, or John Williams, right? Strong leitmotif does rely on the things that it's built and the associations it's created between motifs and moments, right? When it chose to have those moments happen, have the music happen in those moments. Um, But music does not have to be to rely. It does not have to build on itself in the way that film does, and so that's actually kind of a strength that it has, and it can be a lot more surreal and elevate picture in unorthodox ways as a result.
Now, what both of you working on? 'Cause you work on projects together. You've been at least doing that for a while now. Do you? How do you guys make sure that you both have representation of your own voice in the music you're creating for the show, or are you guys been doing it long enough that you kind of just fall into each other's voice, or let's say the show itself is a voice that you're able to just fall into?
I think we're more, at least I'm more concerned with making sure that we're on a similar plane and that our voices are matching. Um, and that we're interpreting the show in a similar way, and that's that at the beginning when you start a show, you're setting up a palette. So we have very heavy conversations about what the show is going to sound like. Um, but we're always checking in with each other and we're always sending files back and forth. We use the same software, so I can play his cues, he can play my cues, or Dina's cues, whatever comes in. Well, Dina's really good at flutes and wind instruments as well as better than me at some of these stringed instruments. So I will steal like tracks of hers or ask her to play on something of mine. You know, we all have different strengths, but as far as our own voice, we're trying to have for me, I'm trying to have the voice of the show, whatever we've determined that is.
Yeah, we're not so concerned with whatever our individual voices are and expressing those. That's just naturally going to happen.
Yeah.
If you're starting with like, okay, this is the palette that we've established, these are the themes that we're trying to do, and oftentimes after a spotting session, we will divide up the episode where one person kind of takes one character, one person takes another. And then so you get to follow that dramatic arc throughout the episode and develop it. Um,
Yeah,
and just
before you go on, John, I think that's an insight I want to tell people about, because very often after we watch an episode, Sean will be very keen on doing certain scenes, and so will I, and so will Dina, and sometimes we'll have to, I say, arm wrestle for it because we both want to do the same character or the same action scene. But mostly, a lot of the time it works out pretty well, don't you think, Sean?
works out great. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's amazing. So we each kind of gravitate, like, oh, I really hear that. Oh, I really hear this, and that's a good way of. It works out really nicely, actually.
yeah, we are very fortunate that after every spotting session for every show that we work on, we are just excited to get going on it.
Yeah.
So that's all that really is. I think it's like, oh, I'm really excited to wrestle with the scene or whatever that is. It's very rare that I think I get a very specific like thing where I get territorial, where I'm like, no, wait, I have a really good idea, and you're just gonna have to trust me. Um, most of the time, it's just like excitement. I was like, oh, I'm excited to hear what Kevin. It's like, oh, Kevin really wants to do this scene as well. That's fine. I'm excited to hear what he does with it. Once in a blue moon.
Now, if this when you're like composing, let's say for Dark Winds, and I'm sure every project is a bit different, but having spoken to some composers before, usually you get a very short lead time, or you get like this many episodes. Let's say this season is 12 episodes long. You get the first 3 or 4 to start composing and whatnot. When you start getting, we think about character and theme, and you're developing a theme for particular characters, you're getting a character arc over not necessarily the full series. Like they're not necessarily saying this is 12 episodes. This is where they are in episode 1. This is where they are in episode 12. Give us your composition. They're like, well, here's the first few. Get started. Um, or do they tell you ahead of time, like, hey, this is just to let you know this is where the character is going to end up. Build your theme to get there. Or do you find that you need to kind of weave into where a character is going to end up, even though you didn't know at the time that's where they're going to end.
Almost all producers we work with will tell us at the beginning a kind of a wide arc of where the show is going that season. And they will also mention, hey, this character is really bad, and there, or this character is not as bad as you think, and there's going to be a twist here. And so watch out because, in episode 8, this is going to happen. So, um, the, right, John? I mean, I'm pretty much find that with,
Yeah, I feel like that has gotten a lot more common these days. Definitely earlier on, it wasn't so clear. Like with Maul, we basically had to just make a called shot um, with him back in Rebels, but that ended up working out great. He was a character that lived by the sword. There was only a one way that that was ever going to end. Um, but for most of the shows nowadays, it's like we at least get the season arc, like what they're aiming for, and that's been very helpful.
So for Dark Winds, also, your two leads are two Navajo lead characters. How did you kind of attempt to or approach capturing the sound of these two Navajo characters?
Honestly, so we wanted to avoid appropriating like native sound, indigenous sound, because none of us are indigenous, and so we kind of the approach that we've been taking has been to just play the human aspect, right? How we would play anyone, and let the native aspect be represented by the setting, on the Dene lands, and by the native people that are acting, and the native people in the writing room writing their dialogue. And we would just be the like kind of framing device for that to rest in, and we try to support that as best we can.
Yeah, and to that end, I mean, we're in the desert a lot of the time, and there's a certain sound that is evocative of the desert. Um, Again, we try to use we don't use like banjos or even we do use guitars, but we try to use them in unusual ways and ways that you don't really think of naturally as like a Western or something like that. And we also use quite a few Middle Eastern instruments and even the percussion and some of the we bow, long necked steel stringed instruments that are not supposed to be bowed. They're actually supposed to be strummed, but we take a violin or a cello bow to them. And but those are all evocative of the sound of the desert. And there's some gorgeous landscapes in Dark Winds, and even in the main title, the lead instrument is a Middle Eastern wind instrument called a duduk. So that's what's playing, and it's extremely almost peaceful sounding or something. It's in a kind of a low register, but I find it to be a really emotional instrument. Um, and it was just kind of to me, it was a little bit against the grain to go kind of so mellow with this wind instrument that is not associated with Native Americans at all, but it's still evocative of the sound of the landscape where the show takes place.
I must say, I really did love the intro to Dark Winds is phenomenal. It's a great sound to it. It does have kind of like that. Part of me was almost hearing like like sort of correct me if I'm wrong, like an old west kind of like the classical west sound a little bit in the background. I thought that you guys did a terrific job with that. How, in your opinion, does that intro then exemplify what was going to come after?
That was a real collaboration when we were first developing that, right, Dad?
Yeah,
Like
I
we were
mean,
all just hanging out in a room, passing a guitar around, right, and humming.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I barely remember it. I'm sorry. it's we write a lot.
I remember it because it was remarkable because I was holding a guitar,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm like, why was I doing that? But then that was the bones of it, and then we developed it and polished it, and made it fit the gorgeous and creepy visuals for the whole title sequence.
like I said, it really is fantastic. Another interesting about Dark Wings, there's also a lot of songs. I'm trying to think of the best way to differentiate. You have the score, and then you have, I guess, maybe the soundtrack music, kind of like the radio songs that are also attached to it, which obviously are from older songs, classic songs.
Well,
Are you in on the selection
the era
process?
that because it takes place in the 70s.
Right. Are you guys in on the selection process of the radio songs?
No,
Yeah, our music
they changed those.
supervisor.
I mean, they get some amazing songs though. Uh, they're really God, they got some Dylan and they got I mean all kinds of cool stuff in there.
So when you're writing for the score, because you do have also, like I said, this. I don't know. Am I correct in separating the idea of the score versus the soundtrack, or would the score still be the soundtrack? I mean, I wasn't positive on the wording for the
No,
two.
I'm not,
Those
I'm
are
not
kind of
clear either. You're not
interchangeable
alone.
too. People people get confused, including me, all the time. So yeah, but I know what you're talking about. We call it source or diegetic music,
Okay.
uh, or or soundtrack. I mean, because they play full up sometimes, so it's not even diegetic at all. But there's songs that existed before, like say a Bob Dylan song or something like that, and yeah, we're not. A lot of times we are aware of what's going to play in a scene, and that we're not going to score that scene. And then sometimes they're not sure if they can clear that song or if they can afford how much that song's going to cost and things. There's all these technical things. So sometimes we will also score it in case the song didn't clear for some reason or somebody changed their mind. But most of the time, we know where there's going to be a song that we don't have to, so we don't have to touch that scene because it's going to be carried through by a tune.
We're always so stoked to follow Bruce Springsteen or something, some immortal track.
Wait, does that impact how you approach the score then, knowing what well, can you pronounce it? Diegetic? Was that the word you used?
Diegetic, yeah,
Diegetic.
that's another word for like if it's coming out of a radio in a car or something like
It
that.
exists in the world of
Yeah.
the film or the TV show.
Does that change how you would approach a song that's going, or one of your pieces that's going to come within, I don't say air, but like within the framework of what that other song type of the licensed song or whatever is going to be played within?
Yeah, you got to be really careful how you weave score in and out of that, because doing it poorly can ruin the effect of both pieces.
Yeah, sometimes we need to match keys and make sure that so it's not jolting when it goes from one to the other.
That's right.
Other
That's why I was like,
times,
why are you in C sharp? And you're like, I had to go into a song. I was like, oh,
right? Yeah, that would be a key that guitar players don't really like that much, and and so we, but the song there was a song in that key, so we needed to kind of match it because it was leading directly into that song.
Now, are you ever in a position where you're like, well, as you mentioned, to say that your score needs to be there instead of the music they're putting it like no, and what would your reasons be that says that the score is now more functional at that moment than the score they're or than the licensed music they're trying to insert instead?
I mean, the decision isn't up to us. It's usually like either budgetary or just like, there's a whole political thing that I don't understand to when those things clear.
Also, I have found throughout my career on numerous shows I've worked with that people's opinions about songs vary. Some people like going back to when I grew up, there were camps like some people were Beatles fans, other people were Stones fans, and they would like fight with each other and stuff. I mean, it was crazy. So, but I see the equivalent of that sometimes when people are producers, and this is not really on Dark Winds, but on other shows I've been on, producers have like really disagreed with each other about songs, and so it'll go back and forth of like what song they're going to use. Um, and I found that people have much stronger opinions about songs than they do about score,
Mm.
and those songs will go back and forth and back and forth, and I'm thank thank my lucky stars that they're not so opinionated about the score as they are existing songs.
I think it's also kind of interesting that Darkwing is in its third season. Congratulations on having the show go 3 seasons. How has your idea about the show or how you approach it changed over the course of the 3 seasons? Did you find that you're leaning towards more than to one end of the spectrum of music versus another as the season's going on, or because you're just, or is it just the twists of the other seasons dictating how you're changing how you're approaching the music?
Well, Dark Winds was a series of novels that both Robert Redford and George R. R. Martin were great fans of and brought to the screen. And so every season, now I don't know if they pick several of those novels or what, but every season has a very different bad guy, if you want to say bad guy, or different protagonists and antagonists, and different settings. Season three has this monster in it that they call a yaitso, which is a Dene word. Um, Turns out the monster really is in Leaphorn's head and has to do with the whole priest problem that I mentioned earlier, um, which is incredibly interesting. And I just think it's one of the best seasons of television I've ever worked on. It's just fantastic. And there's reviews out there that say the same thing in Variety and a number of different publications. And so I think our music changes as a reflection of that season having each season having its own arc,
Mhm.
and we follow that arc. And that's what scores do. Score does. That's why they don't use library music.
Yeah, score always starts with story, and so the story is always different. So we have to adapt and evolve.
Something AI will never be able to do.
Indeed. And so when you're on a show like Dark Winds, once the show has proven successful, once you know there's likelihoods of upcoming seasons, um, are you able to prepare for, or in your head when you're also scoring, let's say season 3, knowing maybe this season 4 is a definite? I'm not saying it is, but let's just assume that maybe it is. Do you or start already knowing you can plan now for what you would do then for the this is where I'd go to the next year, or do you still kind of stay within this is season 3, just assume this is where it comes and where it ends. This is all I'm gonna think about.
I think we play what's there. We don't worry about the next season very much. Um, and we're starting work on season four right now, so that's really fun. And there's a lot of fun stuff coming up in season four.
Yeah, the only times that we're ever really thinking that way, like outside of like a show's world, is when the show's world spans multiple shows, like with Star Wars stuff. When Ventress showed up in Bad Batch, she was in such a different place. We were like, oh, we need to come up with a sound for where she is now. And that ended up paying dividends for Tales of the Underworld because then it was like, oh, okay, great, we get to explore this theme and this musical space further with her in these 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Now the other thing that bothers me a little bit about Dark Winds, and I'm going to vent slightly, is that there is no soundtrack, no score. You can't go on iTunes and buy the score. Is that going to change? Is there a solution to this, or is there a reason why we definitely don't have a score we can buy?
There's not a reason that I know of. Frankly, we are so busy that we have very little bandwidth to push for something like that. And I mean, I mean, that's actually something where I've been a little lacking and haven't, because I know some people have mentioned it to me, and then I'm like, yeah, great, let's do it, and then I don't hear anything. Um,
Each company kind of has like a different like uh, point of contact, different person who's in control of it, and we have you know different relationships with like I don't even know who does that on the AMCN. Do you know? Like
I I don't, so and again, so maybe that's a point, like
That's,
just
you know,
who
it's on
who
us.
we
We
know, or the hierarchy of a company. Whereas a company like Disney, has a huge machine behind it and has a great record company, and I don't know that AMC has anything like that. They're a small independent company, so and it's something I really, or some one of us should explore more, because I would love the soundtrack to be out there. And I mean, they put out Hell on Wheels, so we got that happening, and that was AMC.
there
Uh,
you go.
so yeah, I don't know what the reason is.
For those listening, can you assure fans that eventually we may get the music purchasable somewhere?
We'll
I,
try. We'll do our best.
I mean, from your lips, I to God's ears, yeah, I think I have some of it on my website, so you can listen to that, and you don't have to buy it. It's free.
Um, I can put in the show notes the website. What's the website for it?
It's for me. It's at kevinkiner.com.
Okay, very cool. So what's next for you both, other than season 4 of Dark Winds? What else do we have to look forward to?
Peacemaker season 2 comes out August 21st.
Yeah, we're just finishing that up. We're working on Maul right now
Oh, Shadow Lord.
for uh, for Lucasfilm. We're working on season 2 of House of David. We're just starting that, which is on Prime. We just finished season 1 of NCIS Origins, which was a great lot of fun. And that got picked up for season 2, and we're really happy uh, to be part of that franchise and to be also part of Origins, which is really a kind of a really cool offshoot of the NCIS franchise. What else, Sean?
I
Oh,
can never
Creature
remember it.
Commandos. I mean, but that's out,
Creature
and
Commandos
I think
rules.
that got picked up for a second season. Yeah,
Oh, did it? News to me.
mm, think
Well, I hope you guys return to talk about some of these other shows as well, especially interest in Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, and obviously Star Wars. So anytime you guys are ready to talk about the new show, please, our new season, please come back and talk about it. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Thanks. I apologize for my screaming children.
No worries. Actually, they weren't picked up on the
Yeah, I didn't hear him, Sean.
Oh, good.
yeah. So apparently your mic, your noise canceling mic, whatever, is working. All
Awesome.
right, thank you guys so much.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks.
Jeff.